McGrath for the win for the Volunteers. From 40. On the way, knuckleball. He got it!
How is everybody doing on this fine Monday? I'm Colin Bashnagel, your host here. You can see my TikTok right here. And I also think if you were to search that on X or Twitter, that should come up. But if that doesn't work, always just look up bash_CFB or bash CFB, and you'll probably be able to find my stuff. I ask that you comment, like, and subscribe. I'm trying to find a more efficient method, and I apologize for that blanket back there. I'm trying to find a more efficient method to do these, specifically the recaps. So we're going to do it in more of a rapid pace, and then we're also going to get the game presentations slide here for just walk that line. So you can see it there, right? Don't really care about that at this moment, because we are just going to talk about walk that line here today. I didn't have enough time between the last couple of days to make the slides, so that's also part of it. But the other part is I could just go by each game quicker this way. So let's get straight into it. Kansas beats Illinois as they control them in Lawrence, Kansas. Of course, Illinois tried to have a late rally, aided by the refs, of course, and they were able to cover that -3, which was a part of that walk that line. This offense is very dangerous, and Illinois, they're going to be playing against Penn State next week, right? They're going on the road, or they're hosting Penn State, sorry. How well they are going to be able to defend Penn State gives us a little bit of a litmus test into where Kansas's offense is from a national perspective. Kansas is about to get tested in that Big 12 schedule as well. This was definitely a fun game. Luke Grimm had a super spectacular catch in the middle of this game. Jalen Daniels, even though Jason Bean is a good player, Jalen Daniels just adds another element to this team. So overall, I was very impressed by the Kansas Jayhawks. I thought they should have kept their foot on the pedal and should have been able to pull away, but the refs were kind of helping in that. All right, we're going to go to the noon slate, and I'm going to start with the game that I was at, the Ohio State Buckeyes hosting Youngstown State, the Penguins. Just real quick, it is very clear that Kyle McCord's in the lead, but for whatever reason, Ryan Day has not named the starter. Do you guys want to hear why I think Devin Brown is still alive in this battle and Kyle McCord has not been named the starter? The reason I think is because of this. The upside is definitely there for Devin Brown. Seeing it in person, seeing his athleticism, and even though he did not look like a dynamic running threat in the game, he still brings that to the table, or at least the coaches believe so. And it doesn't matter what you guys believe. It doesn't matter what I believe. And he also is way better when it comes to his mobility and extending plays than Kyle McCord, even though Kyle McCord's, by the way, not bad at this. If I had to guess, Kyle McCord, I'm wrong, right? I said that Devin Brown, I thought, was going to be the starter. I said he will probably start by the Notre Dame game. And at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to be the case. I just think that there's a lot of progress to be made. But there's maybe a case to be made that the coaches thought Devin would play better, and maybe they're giving him that first game kind of because he didn't really play against Indiana. So that first game to kind of shake off the nerves, and then the second game might tell them everything they need to know. We'll just have to see how that goes. But Ohio State controlled this game, but a little bit of concern on offense, right? The run game still didn't look great whatsoever. Receiver separation wasn't amazing, including Marvin Harrison Jr., who had 7 receptions for $160, but 4 of his 7 catches were caught, within 10 yards. He had the one big play for 75 yards, one big play for about 40 or 45 yards. And that was majority of his yardage in this game. He still doesn't get separation like you would like. And this was against Youngstown State. So that's a little bit concerning. How about all these games that got delayed? Notre Dame and NC State. This one was really close late in the third quarter. And then a turnover by NC State turned into a touchdown. And then Notre Dame went on a massive, massive run, massive tear. Way to pull out this game for sure. I thought Brennan Armstrong played a really good game. But at the end of the day, nothing comes easy against this Notre Dame secondary, and specifically that cornerback room. Utah and Baylor. Baylor looked like the better team. I am not buying into Utah whatsoever. Utah ended up pulling a rabbit out of a hat and winning this game when they were down 13-3. Congrats to Utah. I don't think they're going to have a great season. Shocker here. Kansas State, the way that they dominated Troy in the second half was fantastic. It was a 14-10 game right before the half, and I think Kansas State scored a touchdown before the half to make it 21-10. So they pulled away a little bit, and it's clear to me that this John Summerall team is not nearly as good as last year's team, but they're still a really good, high-quality G5 team, and Kansas State able to dominate them and learn from their mistakes that they made against Tulane last year. How about Colorado and Nebraska? This was a fun game, but it also wasn't at the same time. Second half, where Colorado ended up pulling out, was great, but they kind of struggled in the first half, and Jimmy Horn Jr. was kind of locked up. Xavier Weaver did not absolutely explode until later in the game, and at the end of the day, Nebraska's defense, they were holding strong, but at some point when the offense wasn't getting anything going, they broke. But congrats on scoring a touchdown with like 5 seconds left, Nebraska. How about Boston College and Holy Cross? This game was very interesting because you had a 2-hour delay with less than 2 minutes left, and Holy Cross had the ball. I picked Holy Cross plus 10.5. I picked Holy Cross to win the football game, and Matthew Sluka had nothing but green grass ahead of him, not really looking at his feet or where he is on the sideline, looking at the defense off to be his back and the left, and he ends up stepping out of bounds when he likely was about to score a touchdown. That was massive for Holy Cross, because a couple plays later, Matthew Sluka gets strip sacked, and Boston College holds off Holy Cross 31-28. Boston College was in the lead the entire time. Their offense looked a lot better. Castellanos looked really good at quarterback. Going to be very curious to watch how Boston College improves, but they're going to get smoked against Florida State. No worries there. All right, to speed this up a little bit, Penn State beat Delaware 63-7. That's what you should do, by the way, Ohio State, to a high upper echelon FCS school. All right, Ole Miss beats Tulane. This was a close game, and then Ole Miss just absolutely went off. Quinshon Judkins got his at the end, specifically in the fourth quarter, iced it away. Jackson Dart, again, super efficient. This Tulane team, really good. They stuck with them, but that depth definitely ate at them. Texas A&M, 33-48 against Miami. The Hurricanes take it, and that over for Texas A&M points hit as well. Listen, the success that I thought Texas A&M could have on offense, it was risky, but it came to fruition. What I was shocked by was how bad Texas A&M's defense was and how good Tyler Van Dimes is. And Miami's a team to kind of take seriously, but cautiously take them seriously. This isn't a we're back statement like Texas made, and we'll get to that in a minute. Iowa beat Iowa State 20-13. They had control of this game. Iowa State scored a late touchdown, which was their only touchdown, I believe, of this game. And, yeah, this one kind of flew under the radar, but Iowa took control. And we're going to talk, by the way, about Michigan State at the end of this rapid rundown, and then we'll do Walk That Line. So I want that to be the sandwich segment and the kind of, move into that. UTSA beat Texas State 20-13. I just wanted to highlight that because UTSA's defense shutting down Texas State, and they get Tennessee next week right after a road trip to Gainesville. Watch out, Tennessee. This UTSA team who lost to Houston in week 1, if you don't take them seriously, they're capable of beating you. Certainly when Austin Peay shuts you down, that was 30-13, by the way. That's interesting. Also, the Salukis of Southern Illinois shutting down Northern Illinois 14-11. Then FCS to FBS upset right there. All right, moving on. Washington beat Tulsa 43-10. Okay, this isn't much. Oh, North Carolina 40-34 against App State. And guess what, guys? If I pull up this stat, you will, of course, drive yourself crazy. 22 of 43, not a great percentage, but 275 yards passing and 5 yards per carry rushing for Nate Noel in the rushing attack for Appalachian State. North Carolina, what are we doing here? They have 5 rushing touchdowns between Caleb Hood, Drake May, and Omarion Hampton, who had 3 rushing touchdowns. 40-34 was the score in this game, and my gosh, North Carolina, sound the alarms. I get it's a rivalry. I get it's Appalachian State, but Appalachian State is not as good as they are used to being this season. I don't think North Carolina's win against South Carolina was all that impressive. I think North Carolina's win against South Carolina was a bunch of misdirection, and I think we're going to find that out here soon. All right, moving on. Night game slate. We're going to talk about it here. First off, shout out Oklahoma's defense for shutting down SMU all game, 28-11, even though their offense didn't click fully. What a job. The game of the week, Texas upsets Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I picked Texas. I almost went back on that. I'm so glad what I thought and what everybody saw with Alabama in the preseason came to fruition, and I was right about that, and so was everybody, by the way. I'm not trying to gloat about that because of the fact that Alabama had all these issues, and everybody knew that they had these issues. But at the end of the day, Jalen Milroe, he wasn't horrible in this game, but he did make some crucial mistakes. Specifically, he struggled when it came to throwing the ball down the field and throwing the ball in the pretty much just NFL throws is what he struggled with. But he was very good and smart and decisive with the short game. He definitely wasn't horrible, but he's not good enough to win even the SEC West, though maybe he is because the SEC West is down. But I still think LSU, who beat the crap out of Grambling 72-10 or whatever it was, is a pretty solid team and one to watch out for. As for Texas going forward, the biggest thing I got to tell for Texas is don't screw this up. You are in prime position to, even with one loss, make the college football playoff. You are right there. Don't screw it up like I predict you to do. I had preseason Texas winning this game against Alabama, but losing 2 conference games. They're going to have their conference slate coming up. It might be a little bit tougher than a lot of people give credit for. Don't screw it up, Texas. That's my message to you. Speaking of screwing up, Texas Tech screwed up their chance to get an absolute big momentum-building win. Now, is anything wrong with Texas Tech when it comes to the standings and all their season goals? No. They could lose these first 2 games and be just fine. Wyoming, a tough road trip. I had well documented, and I told everybody that this is going to be a tough game for Oregon. Though Oregon ended up covering, I was on the right side of this when I said I think Oregon wins, but I think it's a close win. They cover. They had that pick 6 late. This was a 1-point game. They had the pick 6. Personally, I felt like he should have gone down because Texas Tech had a shot at the end of the game to try and tie the game up. And if Oregon would have taken a knee, it wouldn't have been a sweat. And that pick, not a bet, not to walk that line, but that pick for Texas Tech to cover would have came to fruition. And I would have went 5 for 5, by the way, with my big upset picks in the cover, really 6 for 6, because when I said that, the Holy Cross Boston College line did not hit. So I only hit 2 outright. So the 6 that I posted in College Football Universe, and if you guys have a Facebook and you want to talk college football, look up College Football Universe group. That's a lot of fun. But anyway, I posted 6 upsets, okay? Wisconsin, Washington State was on or upset alerts. They were looking for upset alert. I didn't say that these were going to happen. We'll talk about what I actually picked versus what actually happened. So, for example, I picked Utah to beat Baylor. I picked Oregon to beat Texas Tech. I thought those games would be closer than a lot of people thought. Like, a lot of people thought that Utah and Oregon would both cover. And while Oregon did cover, it was not easy for either of those teams. So I picked Texas Tech, of course, against Oregon. So Oregon on upset alert. Alabama on upset alert. Then you had Utah on upset alert against Baylor. Then you had Wisconsin on upset alert at Washington State. Then you had Minnesota on upset alert at home against Eastern Michigan, even though the Eagles did not get their offense going. That Minnesota defense shut them down. Emu was able to shut down Minnesota, so they covered pretty easily too. It was 22-6, and I never really felt like Minnesota was going to cover there in that game. So there's that was like the long shot one. Holy Cross covered against Boston College, and then I forget the 6-1, but I'm going to leave it at that. I did pick UConn, so I will say I will wear that on my sleeve. I definitely missed on that. So anyway, closer game than a lot of people expected, but I told you guys this would be a lot closer. Speaking of Wisconsin, Washington State, the clear better team was Washington State. And the person who has been telling you this all offseason that Wisconsin was overrated. They wouldn't be able to have success running the ball in Washington State, and the pressure would be on Tanner Mordecai in this passing offense, and they would not be able to keep up with Washington State. Who said this stuff? Me. This guy right here. I told you guys, for those of you saying 10, 11 wins for Wisconsin, that's outrageous. They have an offensive line that's not built for what Phil Longo wants to do. And then they ran into a buzzsaw type of defense with the front seven that's super experienced and knows how to play the run. They stayed in base defense basically the entire game, and they were able to absolutely stomp Wisconsin's run game and force Tanner Mordecai to beat them. And guess what? Tanner Mordecai cannot, because Tanner Mordecai is not that good of a quarterback, and they do not have that good of a receiving threats on the outside. Who told you all this all offseason? This guy. I told you Washington State was a sleeper, and we could see 7-5 maybe, okay? But they could be better than that. It's just a tough Pac-12. I've been boasting about the Pac-12 all offseason. And then Wisconsin, I've been telling you it's not that good. And Iowa here all of a sudden is the one team maybe that is going to be able to push for that Western Conference champ or Western Division title in the Big Ten's last year with divisions. I mean, you have Minnesota who's 2-0, right? And you have Iowa. Now Wisconsin has dropped a game. It's an out-of-conference game. They have time to make it up. Wisconsin could easily win this this division, not the conference. But they're not there yet. This isn't the identity. This is more of a long-term play. Will they have moments? Yes. Will they get better? Yes. But this Wisconsin team, I saw this coming from a mile away. I've been talking about it for months, and I mean months, and nobody listened. Now you guys should start listening. Fun game, Mississippi State and Arizona. That went into overtime. I wish I would have caught that overtime there. That was super exciting there. And then as we hit the late night, just want to point out Auburn and Cal. Auburn deserved to lose that game. Cal played better, and it was a 10-7 game for a very long time where it felt like Cal should have been up 24-7. And the SEC dodged a bullet here, because if that would have been added to what you guys already had in the SEC, that would have been bad. All right, real quick. I just want to talk about this Mel Tucker situation. All I'm going to tell you guys is hold your judgment. Brett McMurphy, can't stand that dude. Brett McMurphy, of course, posted that he was going to get fired and all this stuff, and it, as the official article leaking this stuff. And you notice how when it comes to all this drama and stuff like that, and the stuff that's maybe murky and we don't know exactly what's going on, it's always Brett McMurphy trying to jump the public to conclusions, i.e. Zach Smith. Which, why would the public jump to a conclusion where there's no proof that anything was done wrong? There's no legal evidence that anything was done wrong or domestic violence or anything. Anybody can get a separation order, especially when it comes to divorcees. So let's talk about Mel Tucker here. Am I saying nothing happened? No. Am I saying I don't know that for a fact that something did happen? I do not know that for a fact, and neither do you. And the bottom line is this. This is a Brenda Tracy lady who called out Matt Araiza despite the fact that he is clearly innocent of what he has been accused of. He called out the domestic violence with Zach Smith, called out the domestic violence situation out there. And this all has to do with the fact that she is an alleged victim of, a certain incident. I'm not going to talk into detail about what happened. She was a victim way back when. I don't even know when it was, but she was a victim of her own situation, and now she's a double victim here. And all I'm going to say is, can we wait for the facts, specifically the consent aspect of this? Can we wait for the facts to be proven one way or another before we absolutely crucify Mel Tucker? That's all I ask, but I don't see him surviving this personally. I feel like this is just going to be used somewhat as an excuse to get rid of him, because they've been wanting to do that. All right, we're going to talk about Walk That Line. That's just one little bridge segment. So 6-8 coming into the week, but don't panic. It is a marathon. It is not a race. As we get more data, we get more accurate. That is the whole goal of this. So 6-8 is not a good start in week 0 and week 1. We went 1-4 in week 0, and we went one game above 500 in week we went 5-4, I'm pretty sure, in week 1. I don't know why I have Drew Blake on 1. Tired today, man. I tell you what. So 6-8 coming into the week. Well, let's keep track of where we are. Kansas covered that 3. I was never nervous about that. Jimmy Horn Jr. came 4 yards short, and then Brennan Armstrong just needed 3 yards rushing before he got sacked. And I was like, oh, man, that's like 2 really bad beats right there. But we start off 1-2. I was not feeling good at this moment in time. And then here's the thing. We had all these noon games, and then we had this 6 o'clock game right here with Oklahoma. I'm trying to point there. Right here with Oklahoma. So that was 6 o'clock, right? So I really started 1-3 because this over hit super quickly. And yeah, I'm aware of that. Okay. I had gotten so many people talking about JMU, Virginia, the under, and I bought it because I was not impressed with Virginia's offense against Tennessee. And I didn't think James Madison would light up Virginia, whose defense looked good against Tennessee. But it turns out Tennessee's offense just sucks. Sorry, I'm just a messenger. So I really did start 1-3. And at this point, I was 7-11 and walked that line in the year. And 1-3 is a horrible, horrible start. But then, boy, how the turntables. Oklahoma dominates that game against SMU, probably more than the 17 points that they won by. So they barely covered the spread, but I felt like I was on the right side of that anyway. CJ Baxter, under 36.5 yards. I did not think Texas would have a ton of success running the ball in Alabama. I was correct on that. And CJ Baxter got a lot more run than I expected. I really didn't realize that he got hurt because I had went back and watched the game and kind of skipped. I didn't realize he got hurt against Rice. I just thought he was limited carries. When they were trying to ice the game away, I'm so glad Keelan Robinson and Jonathan Brooks got a lot of the love, though, because I could have been easily on the wrong side of this one if they gave the ball to CJ Baxter, but I think they just wanted to give it to somebody sure-handed. They didn't want to give the ball to the freshman who could potentially fumble and give Alabama new life. So at this point, we can breathe. 3-3. And 4-3 after Eastern Michigan definitely covered against Minnesota. Now, Maryland, you were right there about to, at 24 points. But what was that first half? They fell down, I think, 14-0 against Charlotte. Ended up shutting them out pretty much the entire game until the very end where Charlotte scored a garbage time touchdown. They cut it to 38-20. But Maryland, what's that? Air Force, I love you guys, and I love your style of play. I think they won 13-3. I wish I would have just taken the under in that game instead of because I thought about that as well instead of the spread. Live and let learn, though. So, a losing record right now. Like, that's 2 losses right there that I can't get back, right? So, we are looking at, even though we bounced back and got to, what is that? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4-5. There you go. UConn. Oh, my gosh. How did you get blown out against Georgia State? A team that just beat Rhode Island by 7. A team that has their coach on the hottest seat in all of G5. You get blown out. And they made it a little bit closer at the end, but they were down like 28-0 in this game. I was so fed up. But everything was all right because at the same time, UCF Boise State never even sniffed 60.5. Never even came close to 60.5, and I was not nervous about that at all. Washington State plus 6.5, I was never even nervous about this. Even when Wisconsin cut it to 2, I was like, oh, we got a little bit of a game now. I better start paying attention. And Washington State, I stayed away. So good job for Wazoo. We move back up to 6-6. And then we get this going. I told you guys on College Football Universe, my goal was 9-6. Jacksonville State, Coastal Carolina, under 59.5. Not really all that close. Not that big of a sweat. Florida State, not that big of a sweat against Southern Miss. Now, this was a little bit of a sweat for 3 quarters. Oklahoma State covering 3, but they end up pulling away in the fourth quarter. A better coach team, like I said, it would happen, Kenny Dillingham, a good coach, but I think he's still got to learn. And Oklahoma State was out coaching Arizona State in 27-15 is the final, and Oklahoma State covers, making me 9-6 on the week. Now, if you do the math, 9 plus 6 is 15, 8 plus 6, pardon me, is 14. So we are 15-14 on the season so far. Like I said, it's a marathon, not a race. We are barely above 500. I'm hoping next week we can get it a little bit more comfortably above 500. I like where we're at as far as walk that line goes. I felt like those were pretty good plays last week. And honestly, a couple of the early plays, they weren't really good. In the UConn play, I probably should have smelled that out because I felt like wrong team favored. Vegas always knows something, especially in those types of games. Should have snuffed out some of the stuff. Like I said, when data builds up, and you learn more about each team, then you're probably going to be less inclined to miss. Let's just be real. So with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. I did make this shorter, 25.5 or 26 minutes is really good for me. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I hope you guys had fun watching college football, and you guys have a great rest of your week. I'll see you guys